Man, that was a nice chicken. Good job, Kreider.
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Middle Aged Guys Show. Today you got Darth Pat and Coach Jay, Joey, the stylist. He is he is off and is to the where did heck he's seeing the Fluffy Guide. So that's where he
Yes,
is.
he is watching Gabriel Iglesias, aka Fluffy. Um, he does not love us as he once did.
Yes.
But
And that
then
was a
again,
terrible
last
day.
week, last week we could say the same about you. So
Yes, I was. Where did I say? Oh, yes, I was at a cheer competition. That was a long, long day. That day started super early and ended super late.
yes, it was one of those situations where how I always bring up, the Donnie Darko line that I always like to mock about. I doubt your commitment to Sparkle Motion and everything, but last week you were very much showing your commitment to Sparkle Motion, just not our Sparkle Motion.
Yes, that is correct.
And this week you're giving free advertisements for a surf shop, and it's not Hogan's Surf Shop, so I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah. I know. Not Hogan Surf Shop. I get it.
Have you ever
Boy,
heard the
this.
stories about the guy who runs that place down in Tampa, though?
I have not.
He's apparently extreme right wing, batshit crazy insane.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there's stories out there if you're really interested. We don't have to get into them, but it sounds like this guy is, pretty much, out of his mind. So of course Hogan hired him to run a shop.
That makes sense. Why not?
If Hogan was the one who actually did the hiring, I mean, who the hell even knows if that happened? So Hogan doesn't strike me as the person who like makes personnel decisions.
Yeah, probably. I don't know if his.
Somebody probably said. So he's like, I'm going to open a beach shop down here on the beach in Tampa, brother. Okay, Hulk, who do you want to hire to run the place? Uh, well, you have to hire somebody. Well, that doesn't work for me, brother. You do it. So,
Yeah, that would probably be all right. About right. So, be interesting. Oh man. So yeah, I said last weekend was a long Saturday was a long Saturday. We were up and out of the house by 8 for my son's basketball, his last game of the year. And then we were off to and then we had like a little bit of time, but I had to go help my oldest daughter move. So I helped her pack a truck or a cargo van, I should say, like an work van, and then got home, had maybe a half hour, and then we were off to where the heck were we? We were in I can't think of it the name of the place in Jersey. It was oh, goodness gracious. It was near the Fremont Mall. I'm messing up. I know I'm messing up the name of that mall, but
man,
very very expensive area of Jersey. Homes.
freeloader mall.
What's that?
And so the freeloader mall, yes.
But yeah, it was very very expensive area of Jersey. I think it was very close to Staten Island. Like I saw a lot of signs for Staten Island where we were. So
Yeah. Sounds like you were in like the well-to-do suburbs or something.
yeah. The average home price, I looked it up because I was very curious as we were driving around and seeing all these different homes. Trying to find a place to eat and everything like that, and killing some time. The average home price is about, I think it was $800,000 was the average home price.
That just sounds cheap.
Yeah. My brother, who currently lives in Jersey with his fiance, um, they were looking at homes because she has a house, but they were like maybe thinking about downsizing or whatnot. But even to downsize, it's like $750,000 around where she is. right now. So it's not cheap to buy homes in Jersey pretty much anywhere unless you're like probably looking in the inner cities or something like that, which is not where most people are usually trying to move to. A lot of people are, more people try to move out of those areas and get into, and usually a better circumstance. But some people like the inner cities. Hey, some people are city people.
Not me.
Yeah, no, I'm not a city. I don't mind being close to the city, but I don't want to be in the city.
Right. So, so you said you were moving your oldest daughter?
Yeah, she is moving to, God, just outside of Pottsville,
Oh,
like down towards that area. Takes her about 45 minutes to get to work, about a half hour, 45 minutes to get to work, somewhere in that time frame now. So,
so, so it's work related? Is that what we were saying?
no, no, she moved in with her boyfriend.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
are you sure she's ready for that?
Well, she says she's ready. He says he's ready, so I guess they're ready.
Are you sure you can condone that?
Uh, I don't. I will definitely say, as a father, it is very hard to watch my daughter move in with her boyfriend of 7 months. So yeah,
Oh,
little,
7 months and moving into.
it's a little frightening. Just because, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm all about living with the person you want to marry, but I know that's not in the picture for a while, or at least I don't think it is. They keep on telling me it's not. Uh,
Yeah, she's way too young, of course.
but
Note, I can't remember exactly how old she is.
she's going to be 26 this year.
Oh my God, she's getting old.
So, well, I think I don't want to assume anything, but I believe her internal clock of I had this plan of being with somebody and married and have a child by a certain time is starting to click or tick, I should say, not click. It's starting to tick, and so I mean she is happy. I'm not going to say that she's not happy and she's settling for somebody because that's definitely not the case. But it is definitely like feels, in my personal opinion, just because I've been down this avenue way more times than I wish I did. It seems a little rushed, but hey, gotta let her live her life, make any mistakes that she's gonna make. Maybe she found the one already. I don't
Exactly.
know, but
You gotta
only
let
time will
these
tell.
you gotta let these kids make their own mistakes, which is funny because of a conversation that happened at my job. If it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before. We were talking about how young kids start vaping.
Yes, it starts in like middle school now. That
Right.
vaping
And I'm
thing.
like, that's
It's
highly
disgusting.
disturbing to me, because, it sounds like vaping is worse than cigarettes in some ways. So I, of course, had to ask my sister, Meg, does Felicity know what vaping is? Felicity is my oldest niece. She is 12 and a half. And my sister said, I'm not real sure if she knows. And I said, okay. And it's like, my sister's like, I think she's still somewhat sheltered from that. I said, well, that's good. At the same time, though, it's like you can't keep stuff from kids all the time. But so it's like if it was me, I'd be like, I think I'd rather she knows what it is and makes the conscious decision to not screw around with it
Yes,
than like
I agree.
not know what it is, because then there's a potential that when she gets older and she finds out what it is, she might feel like she has to do it or some shit like that. I don't know. I think in worst case scenarios a lot. So, uh, I'm just like, yeah, I think I said to one of my coworkers, I said, yeah, if I found out my niece started vaping, I think I'd probably drive over to Jersey and just smack the hell out of her, with permission, of course.
Yeah, well, of course, with permission. You got to do it with permission. You can't
Yes,
just do it because you want to.
right, my brother-in-law, my sister would have to let me do it. And if they didn't let me, slap her around, then I'd probably just shake the shit out of her. Why are you doing this? I'd also try to do that thing on like a Family Guy where like I think it was an episode of Family Guy where like Chris started vaping and then Lois like took a picture of him and while he was vaping and showed it to him and like put a caption on it or something like that said something like my son the douche. It's like, you don't look cool when you're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, to each their own, but I'm not going to sit here and say vaping looks cool. You know,
It really does. I mean,
but you
like
got to
so
remember
many
there was a
other
point in time when we were in school, it wasn't vaping, it was cigarettes. Cigarettes were
right,
the
right.
thing that
Yeah.
people, for the people that didn't smoke in high school, the perception was they do it because they want to look cool.
Yeah.
Not necessarily not really why they were doing it, and now that's the new perception of people who vape. Kids that are vaping do it because they want to be cool. It's a cool thing to do. Not necessarily that's really what they're doing it for, but it's the perception.
Yeah. And I mean, and supposedly, cigarettes are supposed to help relieve stress and anxiety. And of course, we all know everybody's stressed and anxious. So I'm like, yeah, that's all well and good, but they also give you lung cancer, emphysema, you smell, your teeth go brown. What else was the other one?
Yes, there can be a lot of side effects to smoking if you don't.
They damage your skin, you start looking older than you actually are, after a few packs a day for several years, you're going to start looking like the mummy. Um,
Well, yeah, it depends, and it's everybody's
when
different.
I
So
say the mummy, I mean the old Boris Karloff version from the 1930s and everything. It had like the extremely weathered looking skin and everything. So yeah, so yeah.
yeah, so yeah, it's one of those things. My nephew, he has a vape pen, but that's not what he uses it
Mm,
for. He doesn't
yeah.
have he uses it for the other stuff. Some
Um,
oils and stuff like that that are bought
oh,
from
okay.
the special CBD shops.
I thought you were talking about something else.
Well, yeah, well, you buy the CBD oils and you smoke that now.
Right, that's not what I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about like butt stuff.
No, I'm not following you. Sorry.
Don't worry, let's move on.
Yeah, I don't think I want to know. Oh man.
I have a troubling imagination sometimes.
So high school sports is interesting. I know we don't normally talk about high school sports, but basketball is still happening in high school sports, and state playoffs are going on a lot in a lot of states right now. I know Jersey is going on. I know Pennsylvania's state first round of girls was yesterday. First round of boys basketball is today for states. So it's very interesting. They got long roads, most of the teams, because I believe it's like a 5 games or more, might even be 6 games to get to the championship or play in the championship, like five and then the championship. It's a long road. They have a lot of teams in these different categories, and I'm paying attention a little bit more just because of what I was doing, uh, this year. But it's very interesting. Like my old high school, the girls program is doing very well. They made past the first round of state playoffs, so they're into the second round,
Ooh.
which is pretty cool. Parkland girls is in the second round of playoffs. We'll see what happens with the boys tonight. See if there's any teams locally that make it to the second round. And then of course college hoops is getting heated up because March Madness is getting ready. We're in March. March
Yep,
Madness will be
yeah.
starting when exactly? I know Pat, you know better than I do off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, Selection Sunday is next Sunday.
Okay.
So that means the tournament will start
Thursday.
with like the first four round, however they call it anymore. That will start then a week from Tuesday, and then like the traditional first round would then begin the following Thursday. So that will be the 21st.
Yeah. little ways off, but March Madness is kicking up just because we know that all the conferences and stuff like that are going to start having their playoffs to determine who's the best of their division, their conference and stuff like that, and that helps
Yes.
determine who gets selected in Selection
Yeah, like
Sunday.
a lot of the smaller conference tournaments have already, well, not a lot, but some of the smaller conference tournaments have begun. And in fact,
Yeah, I didn't see
a
anybody really significant playing this
well,
weekend on
yeah,
Saturday or
yeah, because
Sunday.
the big conferences are still finishing their regular season. The first ticket will be punched, as they say, uh, momentarily because the Ohio Valley Conference is having their conference tournament final as we speak, which is pitting Morehead State against Little Rock, formerly known as Arkansas Little Rock, but so many of these schools have stopped referring to like the state names and just go by like the city name anymore. Like it used to be like
Right.
Nebraska Omaha, for example. Now it's just Omaha, or
Yeah.
you know, what's another one? I can't think of one. Wisconsin Milwaukee and Wisconsin Green Bay. Well, now they're just Milwaukee and Green Bay. So
hmm So yeah, I know I've heard of Morehead State. I knew they were in a smaller conference.
yes.
The only reason I
Mo-
know of them is because they've had. I think they've been in the tournament before. I want to say they've made the tournament before.
Yes, both of
So.
these teams have been in the tournament before. Arkansas, Little Rock was last in the tournament. I got my little file up here that I keep for this shit. Little Rock was last in the tournament in 2016. They were a 12 seed and they advanced to the second round. Morehead State was in the tournament 3 years ago. Back in 2011, they were a 13 seed who made the second round. So they've got um, you know, a they at least got one significant upset win, to their resume and
Yeah.
their program's history. Morehead State, to me, of course, as a Giants fan, is always known as the school where Phil Simms went.
hmm Okay.
So that's why I always know who Morehead State is too. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting. So I know I wasn't on last week, and I feel like it's been a while since this happened. So what was your initial reaction to the Duke player who got injured? What initially was thought to be a causal of his injury during the Wake Forest upset of Duke. What was your initial reaction to that? I'm gonna
well,
imagine laughter.
real quick before I say that. So like the Patriot League tournament's also going on, and Lehigh and Lafayette played against each other on Thursday. Lehigh won, I guess you could say easily. They won by 15. So Lehigh is now in the semifinal round against Boston University tomorrow.
I don't
The
see
other
them
semi,
winning the clone. I don't see them winning the Patriot League. They did not have a great season. I don't even think
no,
they got 500.
they went 13 and 17 overall, 9 and 9 in the conference. So like I said, they're playing Boston University. The other Patriot League semifinal is Bucknell against Colgate. Bucknell was only slightly better in their regular season, but they had a better conference record. Basically, Lehigh, if you look at the records and everything, Lehigh's the weakest of the four teams left. So
hmm
Colgate pretty much dominated this conference. They went 16 and 2, so I'm sure they're the favorites.
Yes.
But anyway, yes, the storming of the court that looked like it injured Kyle Filipowski. Well, first of all, let me say, as a North Carolina fan, Kyle Filipowski is, I was even like talking to my dad about this. I'm like, so is he like the Duke White guy that we have to irrationally hate now along the lines of, the Christian Leitners and Cherokee Parks and uh, Kyle
JJ Redick.
Singlers and JJ Reddicks and John Shire, who of course is now Duke's coach, and Greg Paulus and the Plumlee brothers of the world, and Grayson Allen, of course.
Yes.
Um, and he said pretty
Definitely
much,
Grayson
yeah.
Allen.
So here's the thing: storming the court, and I've said this numerous times. I'm pretty sure storming the court has become completely meaningless. It used to be you storm the court if your team just upset number one, and by upset I meant like your team was not a ranked team.
Right.
So like, let's say North Carolina is hosting Duke. Duke's ranked number one, and North Carolina's ranked even say number 16. and North Carolina wins, North Carolina does not storm the court. You know, I can't say that I've ever seen North Carolina fans storm the court. So, mostly because North Carolina usually wins, but yeah, that's beside the point. But storming the court over the last several years here now, and I don't really remember what exactly started this trend to make it seem like it happens all the time. Now it seems like anybody storms the court anytime they beat a ranked team that's ranked higher than them, even if their team is also ranked. That's completely fucking ridiculous. You definitely make it completely meaningless. So storming the court has gotten out of hand to the point, like I said, it's meaningless and it's dumb and it's pointless.
Right.
So it means nothing. Now here's what pisses me off.
Okay, before you go into that, I will say this about Wake Forest. Wake Forest's program has not that they've been bad, but it has not been elite like it was years ago.
When Tim
It's
Duncan.
yeah, Tim Duncan like it's gone way downhill compared to what it used to be. It
Right.
just does not
It
compete
has
anymore like that.
it has not been a significant program for some time, unfortunately. I'm looking up Wake Forest tournament history here real quick. They've only made the tournament three times in the last 15 years,
Yeah. So I mean, for them
where they
to
used to make
get
it
a
pretty
big
much
win,
almost every year. Yeah.
yeah. So for them to get a big win over Duke, those fans have a right to be excited. Do I think they needed to storm the court? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Um, so, so it is a big, big win for them because they haven't. I don't think they probably haven't beat Duke in probably those 15 years. You know, it's probably been that long since they beat Duke. You know, that
Yes,
Tobacco Road, all that stuff.
off the top of my head, I have no idea, but yeah. Um, but like I said, what annoys me about this is that it takes a player potentially getting injured, and of course he really wasn't, as the days that
Yeah,
passed
he faked
revealed.
the injury.
I don't know that he faked it because he definitely got hit, when it happened and everything, but it was probably just an in the moment thing where, he was like limping or whatever. So it pisses me off that it takes a player getting hurt potentially for any of like the talking heads or coaches or whoever to suddenly start saying, we need to do something about this. This is not acceptable. It infinitively, infinitely, I'm sorry, drives me more insane when that player who gets hurt is a Duke player. It's like there's certain programs it seems like, yeah, that they would, go just ape shit over if like, oh my God, player for such and such. And admittedly, my team, North Carolina, is probably one of them. The other ones would be like Kansas, Kentucky, UCLA, maybe a few others. Um, but it's like, no, you can't start saying we need to do something about court storming when somebody gets hurt when you haven't said dick about it for years. Okay? But that's always the way that this shit always works, no matter when, if it's like something involving sports or something that matters or whatever the case is. It takes for something to happen before somebody says, we cannot allow this to happen. And it's like, well, you could have prevented this from happening a long time ago, but it took for that worst case scenario to occur before you decided to fucking do something about it. And I really hate that attitude, you know?
Right.
So it's like, this kind of falls under for me, this kind of falls under the heading of Cry Me a fucking river. Not just Cry Me a river, but Cry Me a fucking river. So, like I said, I'm all for prohibiting court storming, or doing everything you can to limit it. Obviously, probably the only way you can really fully limit it would be to have like, more security, more cops or something like that. And most schools, I'm sure, will probably come up with some reason saying that they can't afford it or whatever. And I'm like, all right. I mean, it's like it's not even something that you would need all the time, because like if you're playing against,
Hmm.
non-elite teams, non-good teams, there's no court storming that's going to be involved. So it's like maybe a couple times a season you'd have to be ready for it. So I don't know. It's just, yeah. Court storming bad. Saying we need to do something about court storming because a Duke player got hurt, also bad.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, it's not any better. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like just and it's also it also feels like it's almost like a pass the buck thing. Like you've seen Spaceballs,
Yes.
so like the scene towards the end where they reverse Mega Maid from sucking the air off the
To-
planet to blowing the air back
She's
onto the
gone from
planet.
suck to blow.
Right. But then they're all like, do something, do something, do something. They all are trying to pass the buck down the line, so
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
now you want somebody to do something.
Yeah.
So
Now it's
again,
important.
yeah. So again, screw court storming. It shouldn't happen unless your team is beating number one and your team, and it's like a true upset.
Right.
And of course, yeah, it's like anytime you beat number one, it's an upset. But yeah, again, if you're another ranked team and you beat number one, that doesn't mean you get to storm the court.
Yeah, I think if you're ranked, there's kind of that expectation that you can beat a higher ranked team. Like it's not
Yeah,
out of the realms of possibility. It's those teams that are, you know, 26 and beyond, that you're
yeah,
just like, oh yeah, they maybe even 26, they're kind of on the cusp of being ranked, you know. Um, but if you're a team like 40 of the top 100 teams, there's not that expectation that you're going to beat number one or even possibly beat number 25. So,
yeah. Like,
so yeah,
I'm trying to look up. I was present for a court storming once, but I did not participate, mostly because I wasn't sitting in the student section. This was a Notre Dame game,
okay,
but it was a Notre Dame this was a Notre Dame UConn women's game.
okay, yeah, to beat UConn. I mean, you're talking UConn was dominant for what 20 years or more.
Well, yeah, they kind of never really went away.
Yeah.
They've always been. So if I'm looking at this correctly, this would have had to have been when it was because it's the only time I could have been there. January 15th, 2001. It was at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's women's team beat UConn's women's team 92 to 76. I want to say that UConn was undefeated and ranked number one. Um, it was the first time Notre Dame's women had ever beaten UConn's women, so that was significant. The interesting thing was they would play each other twice again later that season. They played March 6th in the Big East tournament, and UConn won by 2 points. Then they played about 3.5 weeks later in the women's Final Four, and Notre Dame won by 15. Notre Dame's women won the national championship that year,
Hmm.
um, which was pretty cool to be on campus for that. Um, I'm trying to find something for the game itself, and I can't like something that says, oh, okay, wait, here's this. Let's see if this article works because this is going to be old. Notre Dame beats number one UConn for first time. Um, let's see, another basketball winning streak came crashing down at Notre Dame on January 15, 2001. The largest home crowd in school history. Okay, Notre Dame was ranked number three. Like I said, they went on to win the national championship, so obviously they were a good team. So it was beating number one, beating that team for the first time ever, snapping a 30-game win streak for the opposing team. Those are circumstances under which I could accept storming the court, even when you're a ranked team, you
Hmm.
know? Because that's still kind of a monumental upset. And like this article even says, it kind of harkened back to 27 years prior to that in 1974 when Notre Dame's men's basketball team beat UCLA, which ended UCLA's 88-game winning streak.
No, yeah, but yeah, when
when Wooden was still the coach. Yeah.
Yeah, when it was still a coach, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was there, better known as at that point in time he was still
Well, Kareem wouldn't have been there anymore in '74. He was in the
right.
NBA
Yeah,
by
he was already in the NBA.
then. That might have been a Bill Walton team.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm not 100% sure. I
Yeah.
read one book by I don't know if it was written by uh, John Wooten, but it was about his time there, and it was a collection of stories from people that either played for him or met him through coaching and stuff like that, and had the chance to sit down and talk with him. So it was like a collection of their stories about him specifically.
I was told a great story about John Wooden from the man who beat him on the court that day, which was Digger Phelps. The he used to be an analyst then for ESPN for years until a few years ago they basically fired him.
Mm,
So if
okay.
they felt like they needed to get younger or something. But Digger Phelps came into my dorm to talk to us about like volunteer programs and stuff like that, which I did get involved in a little bit as much as I could, which wasn't a lot because I was struggling with my trying to stay afloat academically, of course, which I of course did not. That's another story. But but no, it was nice again because it was like a campus outreach thing. It was a give back to the community type thing. So it was like for all the right reasons and everything.
Yes.
But I think a lot of us who attended that night were also like, "Hey, it's Digger Phelps. He's going to have great stories to tell and everything." And he told a story about how when he was in I don't remember if it was his first year, first couple of years as the coach at Notre Dame. They played UCLA and they were completely outmatched. It
Right.
was like it was totally David versus Goliath, and UCLA was kicking the shit out of them. And it was late in the game. UCLA is up significantly. The outcome of the game is not in doubt. UCLA is going to win, and they start full court pressing Notre Dame. And Phelps was pissed because he felt that in a way it was belittling his players who were clearly outmatched. And he said he angrily went up to Wooden after the game, I guess like during like the post game handshake, whatever, what have you. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And he said Wooden just gave an excuse. Well, we needed to work on our press. And I guess that's when you work on it press when you're dominating a weaker opponent. Doesn't seem right to me. And so and I don't think it obviously did not sit right with Digger Phelps. So he just said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to remember this, and we'll see each other again." And then a couple years later, they end UCLA's big winning streak like that. So
Hmm.
he kind of got his revenge.
Yeah.
But it was really cool to hear him tell the story. I wish I could tell the story the exact same way that he did on that night 20, 23, 24 years ago now,
Yeah,
because that's how long
it's one
ago
of
it
those
was.
things. Like I've had my fair share of running with coaches, and I would say I'm probably too nice at times when it comes to sports and being a coach and understanding how players react uh, to being devastated and demolished by another team, and the way that I like to handle it is not the way that all coaches handle it. Um, So
Yeah,
I can see it from both sides, being like pissed off that somebody would do that regardless of the level that you're playing at. Like if you're that dominant, like, you don't need to back off and not try to score, but it doesn't mean that you gotta turn the heat up and press me either. Like there's that like fine line. Don't stop playing, but don't, embarrass, the
mm,
kids, because they still are just kids. But John
yeah,
Wooden, he is, you know, if you ever have a chance to read anything about him, I don't know if you ever will, but if anybody's that's listening ever wants to read a really good, just a book about a really smart college coach and just a really good overall person that cared about his players, that would be somebody to read about. But it's crazy. Even at the college level, he didn't let them practice with a basketball like to start. Like that was not how he ran his practices. And I don't know when he would incorporate a basketball into practices, but he was very keen on if you cannot execute a play without the ball, then how are you going to execute the play with the ball? Like executing a play is not about being able to dribble the ball. It's not about being able to necessarily pass the ball. It's about being execute and running to certain spots, being able to set the screens properly, know where all the players are going to be at any given moment during the play, anticipation. So it's very interesting to know that he was doing that at a college level, regardless of the players that were coming to his school. So
Yeah, it's almost like Hoosiers in a way. Like, if you remember the movie Hoosiers, Gene Hackman's coach character is like, four passes before you shoot. So,
yeah, no, and it's true. Like there's statistics all out there because I was look, I when I was doing some research and stuff like that on things, to make our high school team better that me and the other coaches were coaching. There was a statistic that one of the college coaches was threw out there, and every time they reverse the ball, so that means you go from one side of the court back to the other. Okay, so that could be you know um, corner to other corner or wing to wing. Like every time you change direction of the ball, it increased your shot percentage because now you're making the defense move, you're catching them off guard, you're getting better opportunities. Every time you did that, once again, it increased. They found that because that's what they would track rotations of the ball, like moving it back and forth. When they got to the third and fourth rotation of the ball, their shot percentage went up over to 60, went up to 63%. That's insane. Like that's a really high field goal percentage. I was like, damn. But no passes, it was like 30 some percent. When it was drastically different from that dribble down and take the first shot compared to okay, we passed the ball 3 to 4 times across, back and forth. Like it's interesting things. That's why a lot of coaches believe in the get the ball down and move it around, make the defense uncomfortable, make the defense have to chase you, and
yeah,
getting kids to understand that as well, regardless of any level, can be very difficult at times.
yeah,
So,
yeah. That's the thing. With coaching kids, it's always a challenge. That's why I always had respect for the people who, and mostly volunteered their time to do it. Even if they weren't the greatest coach in the world, it's like, they don't have to be here; they're choosing to.
yes.
But have I ever? Sorry, my sister's texting me and being kind of annoying. Um, did I ever tell on our podcast here the story of what happened to me when I played baseball when we got shown up by another team?
Yes, you have shared that
Okay.
story.
Yeah. I mean, talk about like, a lousy person being a coach and everything. That was ridiculous to a level that it's not really hard to describe, but it's still, you know, it's a moment I'll never forget. So, especially when my coach finally called an end to it and looked like he was ready to kill the other guy. So,
Yes. Yeah, the most interesting time, like I've had teams beat us, and I've had teams not pull back. Uh, and I always, when I see that going on, I always used to, anytime that I saw that happening, especially when I was coaching youth basketball, I'd pull my guys off the court for a timeout and just let them know what's going on. Make sure that they understand, hey, this is not a reflection of you. This is just the way this coach is. He's just doing this. Play through it, and you know, just don't stop playing. Like just keep playing and understand that this is just the way this game's gonna be. This is the kind of coach that this is.
yeah,
So,
don't stop believing.
but we were.
Don't stop
It was funny. There was one
believing.
game this year during our varsity team game that we actually had a referee, which was really really funny. And I don't know if I told this story yet. Uh, tell us to stop pressing because we were at the mercy rule already. And I think it was in the first quarter, like halfway through the first quarter, we were at the mercy rule already. And the referee said, stop pressing or I'm going to give you a technical. It's unfair to the other team. Um, and I'm
Okay.
sitting on the bench because I was, one of the assistant bench and a bench considered what it's considered an assistant bench coach. And I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Like, what is going on? Like, why is the referee stepping in? I'm like, I know our varsity coach, and he was not going to continue to press for very much longer. He was going to pull it back anyways. Might have went one or two more plays, and then he was going to pull it back anyways. But to be verbally told that you can't do this, which is absolutely absurd because there is no rule in high school that says you have to after a certain amount of points. Um, it was just really, really funny. Like, and just dumbfounding. Like, why are you stepping in? Like, it is not your job to dictate what is fair and not fair in this game. Your job is to call the fouls. Yes, your rule is ultimately the rule. You control it. You are you know, the Sith Lord on the court, if you want to put it that way. But like it was just like I said, it was just really, really odd to have a referee at a high school level tell the team winning to back off. You're not being fair to the other team. So that was
I
my one
mean,
experience with this year.
fairness is nice and all, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think he used the word demoralizing was the big word that he used. He used demoralizing to the other team is the word that he used specifically. I'm like, wow,
Okay,
using big
well,
words
I
now too.
mean, okay, yeah,
So, oh man, nothing going on in football. Football. The draft hasn't even happened yet, so we got nothing going on there. I mean, one
yeah.
thing
I
did
mean,
happen for the
it's
Eagles, but
yeah. I mean, it's the league year starts officially this coming week, I believe. Um, which means that you'll start to hear about free agent signings and stuff like that. Um, I'm not happy, if you will, with football right now, because it's looking like the Saquon Barkley era for the Giants will be over. And I understand why, but it's like this guy went to a local high school. He went and played for my favorite college team. He got drafted by my favorite pro team. It's going to be hard to see him elsewhere, you know.
yeah, I get it. And you know, I wanted to reach through my phone and slap Tiki Barber across the head because he. I guess he has his own podcast, I think, or he was on a show. I think it was his own podcast, but he was
I think he has a podcast. I know unless something's changed since I stopped paying attention, he's also got a show on WFAN every day.
and he
Well,
just
weekdays,
he was pleading to Saquon Barkley not to go to the Eagles because I guess he kind of made it out there that maybe Eagles would be an opportunity for him to play for
I've
the
heard about the Eagles being a possibility as a landing spot for Barkley. I've heard a lot about the Texans being a potential
yeah.
landing spot for him too.
But he's like, you can't
Um,
go there. Everybody will hate you here. And I'm just like, my
I
thought
mean,
is,
yeah, pretty
does
much,
Saquon
but
really? If do you think that's something that crosses his mind? Oh my God, everybody in New York's gonna hate me because I went to the Eagles. Like,
no, the only
I
thing
don't.
that Saquon should be, yeah, I mean, he could be thinking that, and it's like I know Saquon's a loyal guy and everything, but the only thing that Saquon should really be looking for is making as much money as he can, especially since he's a guy who's had a major injury. He plays a position that's been devalued, and they
Hmm.
don't make as much money as they used to. And especially in this game, this sport, you don't know how much longer you're going to have. Like he gets like a torn up knee again, he may never be able to come back. You never know.
Yeah,
So the only thing that should be on his mind is making as much money as he possibly can, and I have to respect that, of course. So so yes, but like I said, so it'll be hard to see if that happens. Who knows? He could always end up back with the Giants. You never know. Never know. Um, the other thing that I'm hearing more about the Giants is the potential of the Giants drafting JJ McCarthy, and I was on the phone with our Ohio friend earlier this evening,
Hmm.
and just to kind of summarize what um, to summarize what I said to him about the potential of the Giants drafting JJ McCarthy, I will let Michael Scott speak for me. Hopefully, this will be heard. Hold on. Of course, it doesn't play an ad, so. But anyway, so this is my summary of how I feel about the Giants potentially drafting JJ McCarthy.
Nope, can't hear it. It's not picking it
Yeah.
up.
It's when he just starts screaming no. He's like, oh, oh God, please no. The Giants draft JJ McCarthy. There is the potential for me to get violent.
Start
Like
punching stuff in your apartment.
start throwing shit, take remote controls and start chucking them up to the loft, something. I don't know. I'm like, you already made one. And again, I like the guy. I hate criticizing him, but I think it's really hard to say at this point that drafting Daniel Jones was not a mistake. I mean, it was. It's been a lot of what they didn't do for him, and it's also been injuries for him. There's certainly never been the lack of the guy trying, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like that's
And
why I
what would
kind of
really
hate
suck
credit.
is if he goes somewhere else and is actually successful and isn't
Yeah,
injured.
but the thing is, yeah, he's had a bad neck injury. He's coming off a torn ACL now, so like that's the biggest concern, with him and
And
everything.
didn't
But I'm like,
Atlanta
don't compound the problem by drafting somebody who's really not any better than he is. Because I'm sorry, I just don't see JJ McCarthy becoming an elite NFL quarterback. So
didn't didn't Daniel Jones and well, all of a sudden was his name eluding me. Shit. Played for the Eagles and Wentz. Didn't they come in at the
Carson
same
Wentz.
time? Or relatively the same time, like within a year or two of each other? I feel like they did.
I want to say there was 2 years difference between them, but
But
I
Daniel Jones
could
is
be
like having
wrong.
the same, not as far as the front office portion, but like that same kind of thing happened to him where he had a statistically he didn't have a superb season, not last year, but 2 years ago now.
3 years.
But 3 years ago now? Oh, 3 years between the two.
No, 3 years. 3 years difference. Carson Wentz was drafted in 2016. Daniel Jones was drafted in 2019.
But like Daniel Jones had a not statistically, but overall successful season 2 years ago because last year got injured. Um,
Yeah, and then
but
they,
he's just
they had a
had
winning
like
season. They went to the playoffs. They won a
yeah,
playoff game. Yeah, and then they gave him the big contract, which is looking like a pretty bad decision. And after
right.
1 year,
And
because he wasn't playing as well, and then he got hurt.
right. And that's the same kind of stuff that's happened to Wentz. Like Wentz, you could see it. I mean, he had a little bit better tools to work with and some better coaching that he had there. But like after the really successful season, it like drastically took a turn. Like, and that's like kind of what's happened to Daniel Jones. Just it was
Hmm.
more of the front office not believing in Carson Wentz anymore than affecting Carson Wentz and having the terrible seasons and stuff like that. Daniel Jones just happened to get injured this past season, so we don't know what would have possibly changed.
What's
Had he
that
been
been for about
healthy, might have
6
had a better
hours?
season. They might have finished strong. Who knows? But yeah, but it happens with a lot of
Probably
quarterbacks. They
it's like
never
2.
get their footing like they wanted to, and or like teams hoped that they did, or
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't consider Daniel Jones a complete bust, though. I wouldn't consider him a complete bust to pick, but
I mean, yeah, there's been plenty of complete busts. I mean, like I said, Daniel Jones can still always hang his hat on the fact that he at least won a playoff game once. So, I mean, that's more than a lot of
he did it in
quarterbacks
less
get to
time than
do.
Dak Prescott did too. It took Dak Prescott quite a while to win his first playoff game.
Ah, sorry, just got to get our Cowboys pot shots in because fuck the Cowboys. Uh, But yeah, so that's football's in mostly a holding pattern right now. I mean, like I said, I think here, let me do. Oh, let me get
The only significant thing that happened in
NFL
Philly this year so far was
year
recent, and that was
started.
this year, and that was Jason Kelsey announced his retirement.
Yes. Okay, so the league year begins on March 13th. That is Wednesday.
Hmm.
Yes, Wednesday. So you'll start to hear a lot of stuff will happen between Wednesday and when we come to you next Saturday.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's what I've been hearing. WIP is like they're like who should it's always the talk of who should the Eagles get. There's a lot of rumors that they're going after this guy. Should they get this guy? Is it worth the getting?
yeah.
Is worth it?
hmm
It's like oh my god, like
Yes, it's the rumor mill time of year, as they say. So
yes, and this is probably for me one of the hardest times to listen to any kind of sports talk radio, just because it's the same every single 4 hours, because it's like 4 hour increments that the new shows start. Sometimes it's six, but most of the time it's four. They come up with it's like the same topics that the last crew just talked about, but they just have like a little bit different take on it. It's like, oh my god, like just talked about this. I don't want to hear about this for the next 4 hours again.
a little bit, a little bit, make it a little bit.
So, but people could probably say it about us. Well, why they talk about the same things on this? I'm like, well, yeah, but we talk about it from a general viewing standpoint, not as we're experts on any one given topic. We don't have that person on our podcast anymore. He's
Yes, we got rid of Joe.
yeah. Yes, Joe's gone. Um,
About time too. It was a jerk, man.
Baseball, I don't talk about because it's not exciting to me. But I let you guys talk about it. But I know there's nothing serious
I
going
mean,
on in
spring
baseball
spring
except for
training's
spring
going
training's
on.
going on.
Yeah, I haven't been following it too much yet. I mean, my whole thing with spring training anymore, the way that some of the Yankee seasons have gone in the last few years, is just everybody get to opening day healthy. And of course, that's already not happened for the Yankees, as one of their younger players is out like 6 to 8 weeks now with a shoulder problem. So, um, position player who's still actually, I guess he's not technically a prospect anymore. Um, and it was hard to say what exactly they were going to do with him this year, too. I think they were going to put him in AAA where he could play every day, maybe try to rebuild some of the value that he apparently lost last year because he wasn't playing every day and blah blah blah. So
Mhm.
um, some of the Yankees pitchers haven't looked great yet either, though. So it's like,
Yeah,
especially Rodon, especially since he had such a wasted fucking season last year with the injuries and everything. So and it was pretty bad when he did pitch. So yeah, but I can't get too I can't get too hung up and everything about that yet because oh Christ, I turned on Ben Hur. I'll get to that in a second. Brown face. Um,
oh yeah.
I
So
can't get too hung up on what's going on in spring training because it's really pointless to follow spring training for a lot of reasons. All spring training really is for guys to get loose, to guys to get reps before the real games begin.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's the
that's
warm up,
all it
but
is.
it's the younger guys to try and prove themselves, see what they can do, see if they can have any
Yeah,
value, see if they're possible call ups. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I'll be concerned about the way they're performing when the real games start. If the stuff that's happening in spring training that's bad is still happening in the first few weeks of the regular season, then I'll get concerned. But because of what my job is and the way the calendar is and everything, I can't get letting myself get hung up on what's going on in spring training. So opening day for the Yankees, I think is I want to say it's on the 28th. I could be wrong about that though. By the time the 28th rolls around, it's like there'll only be like 2.5 more weeks of tax season to go, so
yeah,
yeah, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
So
the only other sport left of the sports is basketball.
Well, there's
Basketball.
hockey
Oh yeah,
too, but
hockey. Well, I'm sorry, I skipped over hockey. For any of our hockey enthusiasts, I apologize.
all
Um,
I can say about hockey is the trade deadline was yesterday. I was a little disappointed with what the Rangers did. I thought they could have maybe made a more impactful move than they did. I think other teams got more impactful players than they did. So, we'll see. They're still one of the top teams in the East, so we'll see how the playoffs go.
yeah, yeah. Basketball's interesting. Um, right now, like it's funny. I haven't been watching the NBA for very very many years. Like since some of my favorite players retired, in that and when basketball really changed. But it was really funny. I've heard some really interesting takes over the last couple days. Um, and Meta World, who used to be Gilbert Arenas, yes, Gilbert Arenas became Meta World. Um,
Really? I didn't
yeah,
wait.
no, not
No,
Gilbert Arenas, not Gilbert Arenas.
you're
Jesus,
talking
wrong
about
person.
God
Shit.
damn it. Ron Mercer, right? No, not Ron
Ron
Mercer. God
Artest.
damn
Ron
it.
Artest.
Ron Artest. Yeah, there
Yes,
we go.
sorry, not Gilbert Arenas. Sorry, Gilbert Arenas. Apologize. Yeah, so Ron Artest. I think he goes by Ron Artest now. I don't think he goes by Meta World anymore.
Well,
Um,
according to Wikipedia, his name now is Meta Sandiford Artest.
okay.
Like
All right.
he's using a hyphenated last name. I'm guessing maybe that's his wife's name.
Well, I'm still going by Ron Artest. So he was on a talk show, a sports talk show, and they asked him, what can we do to fix the NBA in the way that the way the current NBA system is?" And his take was, "Get rid of all the European players." He said they're unathletic, they don't play defense, um, they're slow, they can't jump. And I had to laugh because he sounded a lot like a friend of ours that doesn't pretty much like any European players. He pretty much hates all the European players, which I find very, very funny because, yes, are are the European players super athletic like some of the American players? No. Are they really good basketball players? Hell yeah, or they wouldn't be in the NBA. Um, but he's under the belief that the reason that the current rules that exist, some of the rules that changed in the way that the game got opened up, was to allow European players to be able to get into the league. That they are not actually good enough to play in the NBA, but the way that the NBA is set up favors their style of play. And I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting to say, uh, considering that some of the top defensive players in the NBA are actually are some of the people that came over from European leagues and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting that he would say that. And there's been Jokic has been the MVP for like the last he got two MVPs. um so it's kind of interesting that he would say something like that. But that's Ron Artest for you. He says some really interesting things. um and then I heard a take on Jordan, that the new take on Jordan is he couldn't go left, he could never drive left, and which is a bunch of horse shit because he drove left a ton. But just like any player in any sport, especially basketball, if you have a dominant hand, you're probably going to go dominant hand more often than you go non-dominant hand. Um, but
Yeah,
so it was
that's
just
funny.
some
Yeah, I was gonna
really
say
stupid
that's
stuff that
that's
I
kind
was
of funny.
hearing.
You saying that he can't go left. That was what they always said
Oh,
about
I've
Derek
lost. I
Jeter.
can't hear you. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Gotta put on a different set of headphones. Give me
I can
one
hear
second.
you.
My headphones went and died on me.
I can
Not
hear
cool.
you. Whilst Jeremy tries to
Switch
resolve
these.
this technical issue, we would like to point out that originally for this evening's podcast, I was going to post a warning, if you will, on our Facebook page that Jeremy was going to do this podcast naked. But then I decided that that was too cruel a joke. Can you hear me now? Hello, testing,
Hold up, I'm still
testing.
trying to fix my audio. It's so weird.
Un, dos, un, trois, un, quatre,
Oh,
cuatro, cinco.
There we go. Now it's finally back. Okay.
Okay, so
That
you
was
didn't hear
weird.
what I
I don't
just
know.
said. That's awesome.
No, I did not. Sorry, audience. Some technical difficulties. My Bluetooth headphones completely died.
Ah, you didn't hear what I said.
Well, most
Now, why
likely.
did they completely die? Did you not charge them the way you should have?
No,
Hmm?
I did not. I did not.
You naughty, naughty boy. I hope you've learned a valuable lesson here.
I did. I thought they were charged. I They were not.
Well, as they
Oops.
say, you thought wrong.
I did. That's what I get for thinking.
Ooh, I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm thinking what I'm gonna do to Kevin Nash. Yeah, I got Miss Madness and Mo and Medusa and Gorgeous George, and now Sid Vicious is joined up with the madness. Yeah. That's where I am in the Reliving the War rewatch. It's June of 1999. They just
Nice.
ran the very brutally hard to watch Great American Bash pay-per-view that from that year. That's one that's
Cool.
kind of infamous for when the dogs attacked Sting.
Uh,
Um, but the main event match was Kevin Nash defending the WCW title against Macho Man Randy Savage. And like I said, this is when Macho Man's got Gorgeous George Medusa and Miss Madness, the future Molly Holly, coming down with him all the time. And he's acting pretty crazy and everything. And at the end of this match, Sid Vicious came back to WCW and attacked Nash and joined up with Savage. So
he's got the psycho
meanwhile, in
mind.
WWF land, we were at the episode of Raw where Stone Cold had been appointed CEO of the company by Linda and Stephanie because of Vince being revealed as the higher power. And it was the one where Stone Cold went to, WWE headquarters at Titan Tower and was like, wreaking havoc in like the boardroom and everything, which that episode is like everything that he did in those pre-tape segments was a hell of a lot more entertaining than anything they did in the arena in the ring that night because they had a bunch of like dumb gimmick matches which were contested under the purpose of Vince and Shane deciding what stipulation they should have for their match at King of the Ring against Austin, which of course ended up being a ladder match. And all the matches were like 2 minutes long.
Hmm.
So, uh,
Stimulating.
yeah, well, that's what it was. Everybody says about how great WWF was in 1999, and for the most part, they did more right than wrong. But they did a lot of shit that wasn't good on a week-to-week basis too.
Oh yeah.
Whether it was like the Russoist of Russo segments, or just the fact that they just had really short, pointless matches. Problem was, of course, is that Nitro at this time wasn't doing anything better, and it was not nearly as compelling. So that's why
Well,
WWF
yeah.
kicked their ass.
I feel like this is the time where the NWO is going out of control with the amount of members and there was
Well,
the
no,
NW Red and
by this time we're actually already past that part. By this time, the NWO basically doesn't even exist anymore
okay.
because Hogan's out with an injury, is out with a knee injury right now. Hall's been off TV for quite some time because he was either injured or he was dealing with his alcohol issues again.
Yep.
Um, Scott Steiner's basically off doing his own thing. He's reunited with Rick, who turned heel to join him. The only way in which the NWO really still exists is the B team guys, Vincent, RIP, Scott Norton, Brian Adams, those Stevie Ray, excuse me, those guys. So the main stuff that WCW is doing at this point is, like I said, Nash is the champion. He's feuding with Savage. Flair is still the president of the company, acting kind of unhinged. He's turned his back on Benoit and Malenko because they were getting upset with him acting kind of crazy. And
Right.
then Roddy Piper had come back for one of his runs and was opposing Flair. And he just had like another match with Flair. But during the match, Buff Bagwell, who's been getting a face push at this point, um, came down and like interfered in the match. And then Piper turned on him. And it was the funniest thing because they were starting to do this as like a something that they actually ended up recycling when Russo and Bischoff tried to reboot the company in 2000 with the New Blood against the Millionaires Club thing. Because it's like Bagwell and other guys like Benoit, Malenko, Saturn, a few others are starting to complain about how like the old guys won't like step aside and this and that. And in this case, the young guys are the faces and the old guys are the heels. And when they did this shit in 2000, it was the opposite. Um,
Yeah.
they just started the whole Jersey Triad with DDP, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Chris Canyon, and they're the tag champions right now. They've also just started the No Limit Soldiers versus the West Texas Rednecks feud, which was when Conan and Rey Mysterio, and then I think Kidman joins up with them too, have like banded together with Master P.
Mm-hmm.
And then the West Texas Rednecks were Kurt Hennig, Barry and Kendall Windham, and Bobby Duncombe Jr., and that's when they're doing the whole rap is crap thing. And of course, this backfires spectacularly because the Hennig and his guys were supposed to be the heels, and Conan and Mysterio are supposed to be the faces. But WCW fans started cheering for the "Rap is Crap" song and booing Master P because he and his guys came off as assholes and everything. So it's just like it just so spectacularly backfires.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the WCW was at another one of their points where they didn't really have their full roster because of injuries. Like Booker T has been out for a while right now too. Bret Hart obviously isn't on TV at this point because it's just a couple of weeks since the Owen Hart passing. Um, so it's like they don't have their full roster, but you can kind of clearly tell that they don't really even know what to do. Like, and they have nothing they can do. Like everybody still just wanted to see Austin versus McMahon. So
Yeah. So it's so talking about WWE and wrestling in general, we have some inductees. They've announced some inductees finally. We have Paul Heyman as an inductee, Bull Nakano,
yes, yep.
and then the U.S. Express,
The
which
U.S.
was
Express.
yeah, which was
Barry
one that
Windham and yeah, Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda. Yep.
yep. So those were, I know both of those wrestlers as individual wrestlers. I did not know they were a tag team at one point in time. Um,
Yes, they were fun. A couple interesting facts about them as a tag team in WWF. They were the tag team champions going into WrestleMania 1. They got beat at WrestleMania 1 for the tag belts by the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. I think they won them back and then they lost them to the Dream Team, which was Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. And then they both basically left the company. Um, they would both eventually get to Jim Crockett Promotions again. Like, Wyndham went back and Rotunda, he may not have gone directly back because he had a couple of weird, not weird, but he had a few gimmicks then. Like, first, he was part of the Varsity Club stable, which also involved Kevin Sullivan, Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and Rick Steiner. Then he did Captain Mike, which I think was supposed to be like Captain Ron, like it was a Kurt Russell movie in the late '80s. He came out like dressed with like as if he was like a ship's captain or like a yacht captain kind of thing. Then he did Michael Wall Street, where he was supposed to be like, like the big financial wizard guy, and he was managed by Alexandria York, Terry Runnels,
mhm.
Marlena. When she put together this stable, it was like him and like Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton when they broke up the Rock and Roll Express and turned Ricky Morton heel and stuff. But after he did that gimmick for a few months, then he went back to WWF as Erwin R. Shyster,
Shyster. Yeah, and that's how I
which was
always remembered him.
yeah, I was gonna say that was probably always his most successful run as an individual wrestler. He um even though he wasn't always an individual wrestler. Like, they because he was quickly after about
Is
6 to 8 months or so when he came
was
back.
he inducted as IRS already? I feel like
No,
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 he
he was
wasn't.
not.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like after like 6 to 8 months, they teamed him up with Ted DiBiase as Money Incorporated, and they held the
Yep.
tag belts on several occasions. And they had feuds with like the Natural Disasters and the Nasty Boys and Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake and the Steiner brothers. So then he continued to wrestle as IRS for a couple more years after DiBiase retired, and he got into feuds with like the Undertaker and Razor Ramon over the Intercontinental title. So he was one of those guys that was like always like a very reliable, steady mid carder. He didn't have bad mic skills. He didn't have great mic skills, but he could get on the mic and talk, and he especially was able to tear into the IRS character.
Yeah, I feel like he had a
Um,
line about paying taxes or something like that. I feel like there was a
yeah,
line
pretty
that
much
he
always when he was IRS, he would always like before like the match started, he would like come out, he would grab a hold of the mic and he would say something about um like okay, I think I always remember this one. Survivor Series 1993. He was captain of a Survivor Series team with Diesel, Rick Martel, and Adam Bomb. And the opposing team it was supposed to be Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, the 1-2-3 Kid, and Marty Jannetty, but Randy Savage took Mr. Perfect's place. But like when they came into the ring, like IRS grabs on the mic, and this is when Survivor Series was still on Thanksgiving Eve.
hmm
So he said something to the effect of like, on the eve of Thanksgiving, you people should be lucky that this team of survivors isn't coming to your house to audit you. So he leaned heavily into like the gimmick was saying shit like that, like he was always like, pay your taxes, that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. But yeah,
so,
no,
so,
I always enjoyed
course,
RS.
yeah, and of course they became brothers-in-law because Mike Rotunda married Barry Windham's sister. And Mike Rotunda, of course, is the father of Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas,
hmm
which obviously
Yeah.
means Barry Windham is their uncle, which he is.
Yep.
So that's, of course, also leading me to believe that since they're going to induct those guys, and this will, of course, make Barry Windham a two-time nominee since he was one of the Four Horsemen that
Yep.
they put in when they inducted the Four Horsemen. Um, this makes me think that I think it's almost a guarantee we'll see Bray Wyatt be inducted posthumously this year too.
Yeah, and I'm kind of torn on that. I get why they're going to do it, but I also don't necessarily agree with the fact that Bray Wyatt was because of the length of his career and the amount of times that he was injured during his career, that he was really truly a Hall of Famer, if you want to,
I
so
know what you're saying, and as you can especially say, in this age of wrestling, maybe he didn't have enough accomplishments, but he was an unforgettable character when you come right down
yes,
to
absolutely.
it. There are much lesser people in the Hall of Fame. We also got to, I think, remember that we can't really take this Hall of Fame too seriously in some
Yes.
cases.
It's more of an
But
honorary thing than it is a truly
yeah, it's
based
a way to
on.
just kind of be acknowledged and stuff.
Well, I mean, come on.
And again,
As much as I love Coco Beware is in the Hall of Fame. So,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's one of those guys who's definitely on the lower rung of Hall of Famers. So again, as much as I like Coco Beware, I think he was a little underrated. And I've also heard a lot of times that he did his best work in like Memphis and some other territories before he ever got to WWE, so or WWF. So but the other thing, of course, with Bray is that obviously his career is over. So there's nothing that can ever be added to it. And I think it's one of those cases where they kind of want to. It's not really the right term to say that they want to strike while the iron is hot. They probably want to induct him while people still have fresh memories or
yeah,
fresher memories. It's
where they don't have
the,
to go
the
back and like remind everybody who Bray Wyatt was.
right. This is most akin. This is going to be most similar to when Eddie Guerrero died. Eddie
hmm
Guerrero died in November of 2005. The following year's WrestleMania, which was then only like what 3 4 months later, they inducted him into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Bray passed away. I think it was like August September. So it's been it's going to be a couple months longer between his passing and WrestleMania than it was for Eddie Guerrero, but it's the same general principle, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Like I said,
it's
I
like a guy,
get it.
it's a guy who was on the active roster, passes away kind of suddenly, um, you know, and it's like, well, we want to put him in now and just take care of it now.
And
So
I think the right person to induct him, even though he did not have as big of a push or as well known of a career in WWE, would be his brother Bo. I think that would be the person that they should have inducted, just because his dad's already going to be doing a speech along with
yeah,
Barry Windham.
it's like
Have his brother do the induction.
his father and his uncle will be there, but they shouldn't be like inducting him. And they've changed it up over the last couple of years when they've kind of scaled it down, though it sounds like they might be scaling it back up a little bit this year in terms of number of inductees now. But they haven't always had like inductors or presenters,
Yeah.
in some of the recent years. So, not always. And again, it might have also been like the fact that, the COVID shit necessitated changes to course and everything.
Yeah.
Like the one year that they really ended up essentially conducting 2 years worth of classes because the year before was the COVID year and
I
everything.
remember that. It was like
Yeah.
12, 10 people or something like that. Something crazy.
Yeah, that was because like the year that got the COVID year, they were supposed to induct Batista, who they took back then because of that, and then because he couldn't wasn't available for the following year. So it was like the NWO guys, which was Hogan, Hall, Nash, and Six, X-Pac. I want to say British Bulldog, JBL, and the Bella Twins. And so they combined their inductions with the next year's inductions, which were it was Kane, RVD, Eric Bischoff, the Great Khali, and I want to say Molly Holly.
Yeah.
I can't. I could be wrong on that. I don't remember for sure. So, but yeah. So Bo Dallas probably should be the person to induct him since he's his brother. The only other person I could really think of. Well, no, that's not entirely true. They could bring back Eric Rowan to do it if they wanted to, since obviously they were so close. They could have Braun Strowman do it, since again he was a Wyatt family member. Um, they could have one of his big rivals do it. So that could mean Seth Rollins. That could mean John Cena. If they can get Cena to come back and make an appearance.
Yeah.
So there's people
There's
out
other
there
options.
that could do it. Yeah, because they may not because his uncle and his father are going to be there accepting their own induction and everything. They may want to have Bo be the person to like accept the induction rather than do the inducting. They could also have it be his wife though, who was who used to be a ring announcer for the company. So there's a few ways they could handle that, assuming that they go through with inducting him, which I think they will.
Yeah, it's a very good
Um,
possibility. It seems like it's
yeah.
going that way.
The question is who else that they may induct because I read something today, which and this is going to be possibly a controversial take or not a popular take. Um, but as to quote a line from a Monty Python episode, um, I realize my views may be unpopular, but I have never courted popularity.
Mm.
Uh, so today's Cage Side Rumor article was like heavy on The Rock. There was like four different Rock
Mm.
rumors, actually five different ones. I'm sorry. Um, Sources told Fightful Select that The Rock has had input on this year's Hall of Fame classes, and that will become more evident as more inductees are revealed.
Ugh, I don't like
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So I'm like, hmm. And then the next thing says, it sounds like The Rock's grandmother, Leah Maivia, has been pitched as one of those inductees.
For what?
So she ran, promoted, if you want to call it that. And if you watched Young Rock at all, you would know this.
Yeah, I'm good.
Hint, I don't blame you for not doing it. Um, So she passed away back in 2008 at the age of 77 at the time. She'd be over 90 years old if she was still alive now. Um, so her husband, The Rock's grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia, was
Yep.
basically the owner and operator of Polynesian Pro Wrestling, which was the NWA territory in Hawaii. So when Peter Maivia died in 1982, she essentially ran the promotion then. So
Okay.
what Wikipedia says is she became one of wrestling's first female promoters, which that's great. In the mid '80s, her promotion ran a show called Polynesian Pacific Pro Wrestling on the Financial News Network. Her biggest card, a hot summer night, occurred on August 3rd, 1985, and had a crowd of 20,000, which probably isn't bad for Hawaii.
Hmm.
Her show the following year, A Hot Summer Night 2, did not do as well, and the promotion began to decline, as pretty much every territory did in the mid to late '80s. Maivia, her booker Lars Anderson, who of course was always the storyline brother of Ole and Gene Anderson, and Ati So'o faced extortion charges from a competing Hawaiian promotion, but were acquitted in November 1989. Polynesian Pro Wrestling closed in 1988. And like I said, I mean, almost every territory was going out at that point. Like by 1988, World Class, I think, if it wasn't dead, had merged with Continental from Tennessee to become the USWA. The AWA was getting to be on its last legs.
Hmm.
Bill Watts in Mid South had sold out to Jim Crockett. Jim Crockett, I think I'm pretty sure by that point had to sell to Turner. Um, I think like the big promotions they used to be in like in LA and Portland, if they weren't shut down, they were on their last legs. I'm pretty sure Stampede Wrestling in Calgary was gone by then. So, there's nothing I think that she could have done that could have ever stopped, the promotion from closing. But it's like, okay, so she ran the promotion for what? What are we saying then? 6 years?
Yeah.
All right. So I just posted this comment. I didn't think it wasn't like controversial, but again, obviously people are free to disagree with me, which is fine. Um, I said, ugh, Rock getting his grandmother inducted would be a very bad look, so obviously it's going to happen. So somebody replied to me, why would it be a bad look? Do you know her history as a female promoter in the business and the doors she knocked down, or are you just talking? And before I could reply, somebody else replied to that guy saying, obviously just talking. And I just went,
I love how the social media is so funny. Like,
well, this wasn't even social media. This was just like the comments for the article, but it's the same
oh,
concept. Yeah.
right. Like, my thing is, I understand that they will induct people that never officially wrestled or had anything to do with WWE. But normally that is due to the acquisitions that WWE made of the different territories and recognizing the
Hmm.
people that wrestled in those territories that they eventually bought but never wrestled for them. That, based on everything you just told me, that didn't happen to the promotion in Hawaii. They just
Yeah.
closed. Like, and
Yeah.
and nothing against that promotion and what his grandmother did. That's awesome. It's amazing for her to be able to take it over and be a female promoter back in that time frame. Like, in that era, you just didn't hear about it. But that doesn't warrant her being in the WWE Hall of Fame. Like,
Yeah.
like, and
I mean,
like, once again, we're using Hall of Fame as a loose term because that's what it's technically called.
mm,
But once again, that doesn't warrant her. Like, there's no ties to the WWE at all, except for her grandson.
yeah. So I replied to that guy saying, and I said, well, at the risk of sounding like an insensitive ass, here goes. I don't think you can say she knocked down doors when the only reason she ran a promotion was due to the death of her husband. She inherited it. She fell into it. The promotion ran for about 6 years after she took it over, and while all territories were dying in that period, I'm not sure you can call her a successful promoter. But, and you have to admit this is true, they wouldn't even think about inducting her if Dwayne wasn't on the board and acting like he now runs the company. That is why it's a bad look. It's worse than when Randy Savage supposedly insisted his father and brother be included in a Hall of Fame induction with him, which was a story as to why Savage was never inducted while he was still alive because he insisted his brother Lanny, the genius, and his father
Mhm.
Angelo had to be inducted with him. And WWE was like, well, we're not going to do that. How much that is true? No fucking clue, you
Yeah.
know? Um, then somebody replied to me about Lanny Poffo, which is fine. And then somebody else replied, he's the director of the board. He makes a lot of the decisions that are in the best interest of the company. That is literally his job.
No, it is not. Does anybody know how a board of directors actually works?
No, none of these fucking idiots know how a board of director works. First of all, he's the director of the board. No, he's one member of the board of directors. There are several others. He doesn't get to single-handedly make company-wide decisions.
No.
Not that I'm saying Hall of Fame inductees are company-wide decisions. That's what I said to that guy. I'm just like, God, you fucking idiots do not understand how a board of directors works. Um,
And
somebody
even
else said,
still, like a board of directors,
yeah,
they don't make the ultimate decision for the company. They suggest ideas at times, and they can, if they don't like the directions the company's going, they have the right to interject
yeah,
in things. But ultimately, the company is run by the president, the CEO, the
right.
COO, the
and and
CFO.
and that person has to answer to the board of directors, but usually those things are on the same page. Now, if the CEO starts fucking up, then the board of directors may seek to remove him, but it takes a majority of votes, not the vote of one person. You
Yeah.
know, so these people just don't understand how corporate structures work. Now, another person replied to me, I'd
Funny.
agree with all of your points if I thought the WWE Hall of Fame had significance, but to me it doesn't. It's just an annual opportunity to gain some fan interest, remember some people, and honor folks who most likely do care about the recognition.
Which
So
we
whether or not
agree
their
on.
contributions merit being inducted in a Hall of Fame is sort of irrelevant to me. It's just fun to see some people from the past. As large as their classes are, though they've, like I said, they've cut back over the last couple of years. One day they'll be inducting Cody for the second time under the Stardust gimmick, and when that day comes, I'll have a laugh and enjoy the memory. And I just replied to that guy, can't really disagree with anything you said
Yeah, what?
because
Why
he
do
is
I
right.
not see that possibly happening? Like, oh, we're going to recognize Cody and we're going to induct him as Stardust, even though that was the worst gimmick that he was ever given. And it was just, we don't
Yeah.
even have to go into it.
Now, I just noticed this reply, which I hadn't seen too. She was the first female promoter in the history of wrestling. I don't know that she was
We'd have
the
to
first
fact
female
check that.
promoter. Yeah, I'm just saying Wikipedia says she became one of wrestling's first female promoters. And again, that's
Because
Wikipedia, but there is a site.
you got to
There
remember,
is a
Mae Young
yeah,
promoted her
yeah,
own
yeah.
wrestling.
That's the thing too that I'm saying. There is a citation to that on the Wikipedia articles. It's a Slam Wrestling article from 2017, so maybe I'll have to check that out. But anyway, um, ran a promotion for 6 years and was actually very successful in Hawaii. To which I would also counter, if she was so successful, it would have lasted more than 6 years. But again, like I said, all territories were dying in the late 80s. Had a small TV contract in the area and, in fact, had a live event in front of a crowd of 20,000 people. Okay, great, but so did plenty of other people that just didn't happen to be female. To put that in context, when Cody and the Bucks put on their show, they were excited to get just 10,000 people. They topped out at just over 11,200 in an era where wrestling is way more popular as well. First of
But
all,
so
that's irrelevant comparison. Anyway, so I'd say she had some success regardless of how she got control of the promotion. Yeah, some success, not sustained success. I mean, she wasn't like Vern Gagne or Eddie Graham or Fritz Von Erich or Don Owen or Sam Muchnick. Yeah, I mean, talking about promoters who are like WWE's put a lot of those old promoters in the Hall of Fame, but Sam Muchnick, who ran St. Louis, which was a big territory for a long time, they've never put him in the Hall of Fame, even in the legacy wing that they used to do. So, I mean, anyway, hell, she could have, could have. I cannot stand people who, when they're trying to say could have, the contraction of could have, could have. I can't fucking stand that. I'm going to start murdering people for that
The
shit.
grammar police have come out. I'm just
Yeah,
messing with
yeah, 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 yeah. I just said I'll start murdering people. Anyway, she could have just closed it down or sold it, but decided to handle it herself. That takes guts to do, especially back in those days when women were not prominent in the industry at all. Okay, great. Regardless of how or why she gets Hall of Fame honors, she was a first and deserves to be honored for what she accomplished. Something that WWE should have been doing a long time ago, but Vince had to have Coco Beware and Hillbilly Jim in instead. Okay, yeah, fine. Again, if her name was Leah Smithson and she ran that promotion with the exact same statistics, do you think anybody would be talking about her being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame? No.
No.
The answer is no. It's a circumstance of who she's related to and the fact that that person now has power in the company. That is nepotism, and I don't like it, even if it's for something as insignificant as the WWE Hall of Fame. But you know what? It's not worth dying on this hill. Okay. If they induct her, fine. I'm not going to get pissy about who they induct. My issue here, in case you really haven't noticed already, is once again with Dwayne.
Yeah.
And just the fact that it seems like he's now suddenly in a position where he's getting paid millions of dollars, has basically been given control to all of his trademarks, all of his catchphrases. And again, like I said, the company is paying him and giving him those things. Just, I don't understand why they are kowtowing to him at a time where his star was really taking a lot of hits between the lingering stuff about what happened with the Fast and Furious franchise, between the stuff that was going on with he helped kill the DCU because of Black Adam bombing, and so how
Right.
he supposedly was insisting on certain things like, I'm not facing off with Shazam, I'm facing off with Superman, which of course we're never going to see what they teased at the end of the Black Adam movie. The fact that Jungle Cruise didn't do very well, though you can attribute that to some post-pandemic box office, slowness too, in my view. But just, I'm saying, he hasn't been doing the football league again. COVID and stuff like that can be playing a fact like that. But the fact that the football league, that they merged, they're acting like that's a good thing, and maybe it will be just because you don't have two competing spring football leagues. But that doesn't mean that this one's going to be a success. So it's just they're bending over backwards for this guy because of who he is and what he once did, even though the last few years for him have been great. Oh yeah, and Young Rock got canceled after a couple of seasons, and most people who watched it said it was a shit show anyway. Whenever I tried to watch it, I might have gotten a few laughs, but I was also laughing at how inaccurate it was when they were talking about wrestling. So I don't know.
Mm.
I'm just sick of the sucking of Dwayne's dick.
Well,
So
and I will say this to I'm a big Rock fan, always have been, but he's got his hands. He's one of those people that gets their hands in in everything that they feel like they possibly can make an influence, but they've spread themselves so thin that they end up just not succeeding in areas where they probably could succeed if they'd focus on one endeavor. Um, the football, he's got his line with Under Armour, he's got Zoa, he's got his tequila, he's got
yeah, he's got
the
his
football
fingers
league.
in. Yeah, he's got his
There's
fingers in too many pies.
like, and I'm not going to say his drink and his tequila are not successful. Um,
I mean, I saw an ad
it-
for the energy
but
drink during the Duke Carolina game.
but I can tell you right now, his line of Under Armour shoes, and maybe it's because it's with Under Armour, you can't find them anywhere. When they first came out, you could, but now you can't find them anywhere. There's no store that carries them. I even tried the Under Armour outlet to see if I could find them, and you can't find them at the Under Armour outlet. Like,
So
And I'm
are
not
you
saying that's
saying
a
that you
reflect.
can't? Okay, I'm sorry, but are you saying that you can't find them because people aren't carrying them, or because they've like sold out?
They're not carrying them. Like
Ah, so
they're
that's not
online,
exactly.
pretty much online order only. Most of any of the shoes are online orders only. Um,
Okay, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but at the same time, it's like if you can only get it online, that means it's pretty much the definition of a niche product, you know?
yes,
Like it's not mainstream,
right.
which
So it's
again
just
doesn't necessarily mean anything, but if it's not mainstream, it also means you're not selling it in high quantities.
right, and I think it did when it first came out, and then they slowly the hype around that The Rock having his own shoe through Underarm kind of faded, and now it just leveled out, and now he's you know selling shoes, but maybe not at high volume. But yeah, it's just I am at a point where I need a break from him, from seeing him in movies as part of wrestling. Like it feels like everywhere I've turned for quite a bit of time now, The Rock's name is there in some shape or form. Like
Mhm.
he was on
Oh,
that. He had that show Ballers. He was in that show
yeah.
Ballers for a long time, and that show did really well. Um,
Hmm. Well,
it's just
I'll throw in
too
one of
much.
I'll throw in one of Cornette's frequent sayings. How can I miss you if you won't go away?
Yeah. And I was looking into the May Young thing because I was very curious if she actually ran her own promotion. And I cannot find anything. I'm on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia does not mention anything about her running her own promotion. She was a part of a lot of different promotions, but
Yeah.
I'm not showing anything that she actually ran her own promotion. I know she trained wrestlers, and there was this big thing about her training wrestlers and how terrible of a person she actually was. Uh, but I could not, and that was during I think the Beyond, not the Dark Side of Ring. I think they did a Dark Side of Ring on her. Um,
Well,
no,
there
it
was
wasn't
the
Dark
Dark
Side
Side
of
of the
Ring.
Ring about Moolah, which is one of the few episodes I've
Yeah,
still never
yeah,
watched.
the Fabulous Moolah. That's who I'm
Yeah,
thinking of. Not May Young, Fabulous Moolah. I gotta go back. I
yeah.
gotta look up Fabulous Moolah.
Well, I clicked on the article that was linked from for Wikipedia, and it's like an obituary article on Slam Wrestling that was written back in 2008. Hey Jesus, um, sorry, watching Ben Hur, and it's the Sermon on the Mount moment. Anyway, it just says Leah Maivia, who died on Sunday at the age of 81, was one of the first female promoters in wrestling.
One of the first.
Right. So again, it says one of the first, but then it's talking about her. So, um, it doesn't. It's not going to say anything else here. I don't think. I'm trying to scroll through real quick, but I don't think it's going to say anything else here about other female promoters. So again, I'm not saying that she doesn't have accomplishments because she did. Um, she could have just folded shop. She could have just said, "Screw this. This promotion's closed. I'm not going to run it. I can't run it, or whatever." Um, you could also almost argue, if you wanted, maybe she felt obligated to because she grew. You know, maybe she felt it was like an obligation to her husband or something, which isn't always necessarily like a fair thing to have to feel. I don't know. Again, like I said, if she wasn't Rock's grandmother, and Rock wasn't back with the company right now, nobody would be talking about this. Nobody would even care if she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. So
Yeah.
again, that's where I'm having my little hissy fit here about is because, I'm just sick of Dwayne. So yeah, it's funny. Joe, I know he texted us in our group text yesterday asking like who writes this shit, talking about the segment at the end of SmackDown last night. I don't know, and I don't know if you saw it.
Okay. Real quick.
I,
Go
I,
ahead.
I
Finish.
didn't I didn't think it was really bad. I thought it was good. I mean, it ended the way it had to with Cody slapping The Rock. So, um,
I like that.
yeah.
It just makes it different, a little something
But
different.
I guess maybe Joe was objecting to Rollins calling him Diarrhea Dwayne again. I know AJ said he didn't like that. So, Diarrhea Dwayne is as childish as Cody Crybaby, so I can't really necessarily
Yes.
disagree. But you said you had something to say.
Yeah, so Moolah, I found out about Moolah. I thought she ran a wrestling promotion, and she did for a very short time. And she started a wrestling promotion in 1990 called the Ladies International Wrestling Association. She was the promoter for that. It was based in North Carolina. So she was
Yeah,
after The Rock's grandmother,
right. Well,
but she, oh,
Moolah's thing was that she always like I guess she like trained all like the women wrestlers
yeah,
and
she was a big trainer and a total.
well
From the dark side,
what it
she was not a good person to them
what it
people.
sounds like her training school was essentially was a goddamn it was akin to a brothel
Yeah,
and that she was the pimp and that all the women that she trained who went out and wrestled were like were the prostitutes in a way that they had to pay her to like to be able to live somewhere and they had to give her a percentage of what they earned and so that's what it really sounded like. So it's again, obviously not somebody you want to, imitate. And of course, when those allegations, I don't know if it was that they resurfaced or they just kind of came to be known. They originally were going to call that female tournament that they did for a few years the Fabulous Moolah Classic, and then that shit came out, and then they quickly renamed it to the Mae Young Classic.
yeah,
They really, if it wasn't for the fact that those were the two women that they always had that said had a strong connection with WWE, even though I don't know how much Mae Young ever actually worked for WWE. It's like better name would have been somebody like what was her name? Judy Grable, I think. She was like always considered one of the pioneering women's wrestlers. I know she's in the
hmm
WWE Legacy Hall of Fame, and there's one other one whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, but they obviously wanted to give it this name after somebody who the audience would at least remember in some way, shape, or form. And of course,
yeah.
yeah, the reason why the audience today remembers Moolah and Mae Young was all those terrible Attitude Era segments that they were involved in. You know,
Yep. Bubba Ray putting her through a table, put Mae Young through a
well,
table.
that I wouldn't say was one of the terrible segments,
Not
but
the
there
terrible ones,
was.
but that was one of the ones people remember for sure.
Yes, I'm talking more about like the giving birth to a hand
Yeah.
shit. I mean, Bubba Ray putting her through the table that helped get over that Bubba Ray was a dangerous psycho.
Yeah.
When they were doing that part when the W's were in their first few months with the company.
Yeah. But
So I don't
it's
know. I mean, I'll be curious to see who else they induct into the Hall of Fame. I mean, I like people say, oh, they're going to run out of names to induct, and I'm like, well, it depends upon how well they space it out. Now, one thing that I have been critical of is that you don't need to have a female inductee every year because you're definitely going to run out of females to induct. Like, I don't think
yeah.
they're ever going to induct China as a solo. I don't think they're ever going to induct Miss Elizabeth. The fact that they're both dead is the main reason why. Um, but like, so it seems like, of course, they're going to fill their female quota this year with Bull Nakano, and that's fine. Bull Nakano, like I said,
Yeah.
she didn't work a lot for either WWF or WCW, but to me, she was she was probably the first female wrestler outside of maybe say Sherry Martel, who at that point was really just doing, manager work.
Yeah.
But Bull Nakano was probably the first female wrestler that I can ever really remember. Like even before she ever like showed up in WWF when they did a feud between her and Alundra Blaze in 1994, I want to say it was. But I saw Bull Nakano in like the magazines, like Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and those other magazines always, were on the newsstands and everything.
Yep. Yep.
And I just always remember, and I was like 10, 11, 12 around those years, But I always remember looking at her and going, God damn, she's scary looking, you know? And she was because she was big. She had this spiked hair, you know. She had a vicious look, like a kind of a crazed look and everything. So no problems with her being in the WWE Hall of Fame, because again, she was one of the top women's wrestlers for a long time. It's just that she's Japanese and she worked mostly in Japan.
Yep.
Okay. Now that I've said that, I better double check to make sure that she is in fact Japanese because I've been making that mistake a lot lately. Yeah, she is Japanese. Okay. No, like I think I was saying to Joe, I don't remember. I think I put this in the group text. For some reason, I thought Dakota Kai was Asian, and she's not.
No, no, she's
I don't, and I don't know why I
British.
thought she was.
Pretty sure she's
No, she's.
British.
I think it's actually that she's from New Zealand,
Oh, well,
which is
I
close to British in terms of like accents, and
yes,
stuff.
the accent is very deceiving.
But for some reason, I thought she was Japanese, not necessarily Japanese, but Asian as well. And maybe it's just because she was with EO
It was that whole
for that
faction.
time and everything. Yeah. So, but so I'm like, yeah, but yes, Bull Nakano is Japanese. So,
Yeah, it's like for me, I if they did 3 inductees a year into the Hall of Fame as an honorary thing that they essentially that it is, I think that would be fine because then you can stretch it out. You're not going to lose the flavor. People will be excited for who you might put in, especially if you're not always putting a woman in. You're not always putting, a
yeah,
manager in or,
I personally
celebrities
think
in.
four is the sweet spot number because then it's like, okay, you can have a headliner, you can have like a tag team or a group, you can have a woman if you have one that qualifies, but you can have somebody who's maybe like a non-wrestler, which obviously Heyman is, even though he has technically wrestled. Um, so I don't know. I always kind of think, but it sounds like they might be trying to go bigger this year. Like the last couple of years, again, they only really did like three or four, and one of them last year was Andy Kaufman, who was both a celebrity inductee and also posthumous. So, what was it, like 2 years ago? They did, what was it, The Undertaker, Vader, who was posthumous, the Steiner brothers, and Queen Charmel. And then last year it was Rey Mysterio, Andy Kaufman, the Great Muta, and Stacy Keibler. So
Yeah.
four seems kind of right, but again, also the fact that the last two female inductees prior to this year were Queen Charmel and Stacy Keibler also kind of shows how they're kind of
Yeah.
scraping the bottom of that
Yeah,
barrel for
Queen Charmel
female
was another one I
inductees.
was just like, what? Stacy Keebler, I understood a little bit more
Stacey
just
Keibler, I
because
understand a hell of a lot more than Queen Charmel. It's like for Queen Charmel, again, it's like if she wasn't married to Booker T, would she be inducted? No,
yeah, because
she
she
wouldn't.
didn't really do, I mean, she was a valet or a manager, but that was
Right.
very
But she didn't,
short part. Like, she
yeah,
wasn't a very, it's not like she did it for a very long period of time. Like, she was, I
yeah,
felt like it was more, I don't know the exact number of years. I know I can look it up, but it was like their first stint and then gone. And then she was brought back for a little bit, and then she was gone again. Like, at least in the WWE portion, I don't know how much she was there, WCW.
yeah. But so yeah, it's like obviously they have to space it out somewhat, but it's like they can still space out certain things. Like let's look at guys who would be like the headliner type guys. Um, you got John Cena, you got Randy Orton, you've got Rock. So it's still making me think it's like, well, geez, if you're not going to induct Rock this year when you know he's going to be there, when the hell are you going to? Batista still hasn't been inducted then because of you know the COVID delay and everything. Um, Triple H isn't inducted as an individual, but he also probably, I'm guessing he takes kind of the whole Vince thing where like Vince was never going to put himself in the Hall of Fame. I feel like since Triple H is basically running the creative, he won't put himself in the Hall of
So
Fame.
that leads a good question. When do they induct Vince now that Vince is not part of the WWE? Do they
Never.
wait for everything to clear up and say, okay, now that everything is clear, maybe that's 5, 6 years down the road? Now,
I don't think they will induct Vince McMahon while he is alive.
you think they'll wait until he's dead?
If they even do it then. It's going to depend upon how some of these allegations potentially shake out and if more accusations come out of the woodwork.
Hmm.
So,
Well, yeah, I know they wouldn't do it now just because there is way too much
oh
heat
yeah, there's
and
no way it's going to
negativity
happen
around.
anytime soon. Yeah.
So it's just like,
Um,
but that's a good question. Like,
yeah.
do they, if, and if they do, how long do they wait? You know?
Yeah. But I just, unless something drastically changes, I don't see any way that they induct him while he's alive.
Yeah, and I
So,
think Triple H is in that same broad. He doesn't want to put the focus on him as being, it would be different
as
if he
being
never became part
right.
of the management portion of the
Yeah.
company. If he would have just always
Right.
ever
And
been a
that's
wrestler and behind the scenes guy.
right. And that's why I also don't think like you'll ever see a Shane or Stephanie induction. At least not anytime soon or while they're alive or anything, so
And Stephanie, she's definitely deserving. I mean, she was a big part of the Attitude Era. Same with
for
Shane.
better or worse.
Yeah, for better or worse. And Shane was a big part of the Attitude Era. I mean, that was when you saw the most of that family as a whole being part of WWE and like being
Yeah.
involved and being part of major storylines too at that point in time. I mean,
Yep. So, so you have those guys who are like headliner types, and then you've also got some people who are at the moment what you would call not available for induction, which was like Chris Jericho and The Big Show and Goldust and Christian and Daniel Bryan. Um, those are all, and not all those guys would be like headliner types. Jericho could be, Big Show could be, Danielson could be, Daniel Bryan. Goldust and Christian, not really headliners, but they're almost as close to headliners as you can get.
yeah, and
But
I don't
obviously
know
they're
if
all
Jericho feels like one of those guys that maybe never wants to be inducted unless he
well,
becomes desperate for attention.
that's just it. He supposedly has like a 10-year contract with AEW. So I don't know how many years into those 10 years it is, but yeah, it definitely doesn't sound like he's going to be available anytime soon. Um, CM Punk, since he's back with the company now, and you got to figure his career's winding down in some way.
And I am really
Um,
sad. I don't say I'm really sad. I'm really I it's unfortunate that he got injured because I would have liked to see him wrestle at WrestleMania.
yes, I mean, like I even told you, I remember saying that my anticipation for WrestleMania went way down when his injury came out. It's gone back up since, especially since they haven't decided to do Rock Roman. If they were still following through with doing that, then I'd probably be like, do I have to go? Can I get my money back?
We'd find a way to sell your ticket.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so there's like other guys out there, and there's other plenty of people if you really go back through history. Now, availability is of course always an issue. They don't like having a lot of posthumous inductees. There are a lot of people who have passed away who are definitely worthy of induction. They've never inducted Brian Pillman.
Hmm.
Um, they've never inducted some older guys who would maybe just go into like the Legacy Hall of Fame if they bring that up again, like the Crusher from AWA fame. Because I know they put Dick the Bruiser in the Legacy Hall of Fame at
Yeah,
some
we could
point.
see Lex Luger too here shortly
Yeah,
too.
I mean, I would love to see Lex Luger get inducted. Even if he is in a wheelchair. They never put Bam Bam Bigelow in, but of course, he's also another one that's passed away. You could put the natural disasters in, but again, Earthquake had passed away. I don't know if you saw the Earthquake Dark Side of the Ring. It was
Hmm.
sad because he
It
died
was.
so young. He wasn't even 43. He was younger than me when he
Hmm.
died.
Oh yeah.
So just it was very sad. Um, there's like the Nasty Boys. There's Rick Martel, though. Sounds like Rick Martel's kind of turned his back on the industry, which is unfortunate for fans, I guess, who maybe wanted to see him get inducted. Um, there's the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette, but
Cornette won't.
Cornette Cornette has made it well. Cornette's made it sound like he's not interested, and I think that's for two reasons. One is because Bobby Eaton passed away a few years ago, and the other, I think, is because Dennis Condrey, I believe, can only speak through a voice box.
Mm.
Yeah, throat cancer, something like that. So while could have Cornette and Condrey and Stan Lane there, um, and Cornette, of course, could certainly talk enough for all of them if he wanted to. I just think Cornette's not really interested because Bobby Ian's no longer alive, and Bobby Ian was the glue of that team in a lot of ways. So, um, who else? Well, Demolition should go in. I mean, maybe hopefully they can finally get past the whole lawsuit stuff that they were involved in. Um, that'd be nice because they were such a significant tag team. The Rougeau brothers could be a possibility. I've heard rumors about Haku, especially if I mean, you watched that clip I sent you, right? Where Haku was watching the Shockmaster debut and he
Yes.
just couldn't he couldn't stop laughing because he had never seen it before. That was hysterical because it's like a guy who you never saw laugh in any capacity when you watched him when he was an active wrestler, whether he was Haku in WWF or Mang in WCW. He never laughed.
You
So
know,
that
his
was
character
just
was very serious.
yeah,
Very
so
serious character.
that was pretty goddamn hysterical. So there's like enough people that they could find, and especially as like the years continue to advance, oh, then you'd be going back to mid Carters from like the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s even. That's where you'll start seeing people like Santino Morella and R-Truth get inducted. I guarantee you both of those guys will be inducted
Oh,
at
for
some
sure.
point. Now,
Absolutely.
Santino, I know, I think he's working for TNA, so that one may not happen in like the immediate um, future or anything, but eventually that will happen. So
Yeah, because
it
our
just
truth
like
has
it.
been with the company forever.
Well, he was with
Like,
him, yeah, in like 2000 and 2001, and then he got released, and then he went to TNA. He was in TNA for several
yep.
years. I don't
Yep.
remember exactly. Well, let me just pull it up here. I got Wikipedia right here.
There you
I say I
go.
don't remember. I
Wikipedia
don't
that.
remember exactly when he came back to WWE. Um, 2008. So basically, he's been with the company, I think, consistently since then. Like, I don't think he was ever released in that time. Now, there was plenty of times where he wasn't necessarily like on TV or anything. Um, but he's been with the company for that long, and not a lot of people get to have a run that long, even if it's like, stops and starts, comedic, there's just not a lot of guys who have runs
Yeah,
of that.
he's the epitome of a company guy. I'll do whatever you guys want me to do. I just love this
Hmm.
business, and sure, I'll do a comedy act with Carmella. Sure, why not? Because that makes
Yeah.
sense. Ugh, what?
The funny thing
I've,
was, I thought that him and Carmelo pairing worked when they did that. Just like I thought that most of the stuff that he's done recently with the Judgment Day has been entertaining. So
and you know what the sad thing is with the Carmella thing. I truly, I don't like to make judgment calls about people, but
yes, you do.
I will say that I can kind of see Carmella being the flighty dighty kind of character that she was portraying at that point in time when she was with our
Yeah.
truth.
Well, let's remember she did once date Big Cass, so I mean,
And she's married to Corey Graves, so
and now she's married to and has a child with Corey Graves. So it's like her taste in men. Just like the same comment I was making about Tiffany Stratton the other day. It's like Tiffany Stratton's with Ludwig Kaiser? Really? That just seems so weird.
that must
What is
that
she?
must
What is
enthrall
she?
AJ by all means because I'm pretty sure he does not like Kaiser at all.
Yeah, we were talking about that before. He's just like, I don't think much of him. I think he said worse than that, but I mean, I enjoy watching Tiffany. Uh, you know, I
No,
definitely
she's
like
got a
that.
good gimmick.
I
I
definitely like that. I definitely like that outfit she was wearing last night. Which
I
I'm look.
wasn't paying attention last. I
I
haven't
I
watched
I
wrestling for a couple weeks now.
I'm looking at a GIF of her when she was doing like the handspring backflip elbow thing. She did that in
She
her match last
she's
night.
probably
But
one of the most promising female wrestlers
yeah, I would
in a
say so.
while that's come out of NXT. Like she has a lot of promise, a lot of upside. Um,
She was wearing an outfit that, while not overly revealing or anything like that, I think could be called boobalicious. I know we're not really supposed to say those words anymore and objectify women this way, but I come from the time where we still could objectify women and get away with it, so I'm sorry.
was it a
I'm
pink
sorry for
outfit?
I'm sorry for being a middle-aged man who has if difficulties
Pink
not
outfit?
yeah, pink outfit, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that's definitely
I mean, you can
kind of
see
it
where
feels like a throwback to the Attitude Era outfits.
yeah, in a way, so but no, I've been impressed with what I've seen with her both in the ring and character wise, and it sounds like that she's getting a great crowd response. My only concern with this though too, people are quite obviously cheering for her.
Right, and she's supposed to be the
So
bad guy.
right, and I feel and sometimes it's like I'm like, if the audience is cheering for these people, you just have to bite the bullet and do it. Like in AEW right now, Swerve has been getting cheered for so long now that you have to just go with him being a face. If that means you have to break him from Prince Nana, so be it. Prince Nana's not that special. Okay,
No,
he's
God.
not. But Tiffany is definitely the type of character who, if you respond to her getting cheered like this and you try to turn her face too soon, it'll backfire. You know,
True.
you've got to build up a reason for the character for you've got to build up a reason for the audience to want to like the character before you actually turn her face. Because right now her character is complete 100% stuck up bitch heel, you know? She's not going to be able to 180 on that within a couple of months, especially because I mean, I should have asked AJ this on the phone. I meant to. I don't think she ever worked face in NXT, you know?
Not that I am aware of.
Yeah. So I don't watch NXT, so I don't know, but
Another one
it
that
feels
I'm excited to see if they ever decide to bring her up is Nikita Lyons too.
yeah, I've heard
But
good things about her too. Yeah.
she came back from an injury. I want to say a couple months ago. Not like I feel like she was gone with an injury. I could be wrong though, but I feel like she had just come back like maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago from an injury.
The other thing with Tiffany Stratton too, which is definitely on the positive for her, she's ridiculously young.
Yeah, I think she's 22, 23.
She's she will turn 25 in May.
Oh wow, I was a little off, but yeah.
But so you can like have her um for a long time if she stays healthy and effective. So um well, she debuted on WWE's developmental brand NXT as a heel, taking on a spoiled rich girl gimmick, and that was at the end of 2001. So sounds like she's
2021, you mean?
did I say 2001?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
Like, damn.
she was wrestling at a high level at the age of 2. Well, hey, Riho turned pro when she was 8.
Yeah.
Stupid fucking horseshit. Um, just like her beating Chris Statlander this week on AEW, so fucking stupid. Yeah, I mean, just from what I can tell, it seems like yeah, she's pretty much always been a heel. So
Which could be bad because if you've only ever worked one way, that transition is sometimes really hard to make because you're so used to being able to do
hmm
pretty much anything and
well,
you can get away with it as a heel where you can't flat fall on your face as a
yes,
baby
yes.
face.
Well, that's the thing. That's why a lot of people say that like Randy Orton's first face turn, though it technically wasn't his first. Well, I guess it was his first face turn. Like when Randy Orton debuted in 2002, they were using him as like a face for the first few months there. And then he got hurt with the
Right.
shoulder
Just nobody
injury.
remembers it. So,
Right. Then he got hurt with the shoulder injury when he was like coming back. He was in those like RNN news updates where he was like, "My shoulder's up to 47% mobility," and that was like it was like turning him heel. And of course, when he came back, they started up Evolution and everything. But his first face turn when Triple H kicked him out of Evolution, it was like, yeah, people weren't willing to accept him as a face yet.
yeah.
And well, I don't remember. I see. My memory is of it is that I thought he was doing fine during those months, but I guess
So,
maybe my bar was too low, or maybe I was just like,
I
well, or maybe I was just like,
remember
well,
it.
yeah, he's the face because he's fighting the bad guys.
Yeah, it was.
And,
So, my recollection of it is foggy just because it was so long ago now. Um, but
oh, so long.
I don't remember it being anything that was outstanding. Like he wasn't an outstanding face. He pretty much was the
Yeah,
good guy because he got kicked out of
because the bad
Evolution,
guys
and now the
turned on
bad guy,
him.
yeah,
Yeah,
the bad guys turned on him. So now he's technically the good guy, and his whole thing was to get revenge on Triple H. Like all he wanted to do was wrestle
yeah,
Triple H, get his title
yep,
back, and and that was the whole storyline.
yeah.
But yeah, it didn't work. And then of course he formed a new group where he could be a bad guy again. Be a heel with
Eventually,
the
yeah. That was a few years later, but I think it was also because like he hadn't really worked on like other than like I want to get revenge on Triple H and Evolution, they hadn't given him a reason to be cheered. And the problem also too was that he was just like he kind of always has been a little boring on the mic. He was a little boring, a little monotone and everything like that. And this was around the same time where Cena had become a face. And one of the main reasons for that was because of Cena's mic work, you know.
Yeah.
So, just everything about it was like it just kind of wasn't like working at the right time. I always said I felt like that they did that turn way too quickly. Anyway, like wasn't it the night after he won the title that they turned on him? I think it
Yes, they were.
was.
Yeah, they were cheering for him. They're like, yeah, yeah, and they put him up on
I
the
felt like
shoulders, and then he did the thumbs down thing.
Yeah, I felt like that would have worked better if they had done maybe a couple of months of
Well, they
the
learned from their
the jealousy building up within Triple H because Orton had the title, and
yeah, and they did it
you
much
know
better with the Dave Batista when they turned Batista
that was
face.
the thing too. Yeah, it's like what didn't work with turning Orton face did work with Batista turning face.
Right, because they drug it out. They're like, you can see the animosity growing in Batista, and like, why the hell are they treating me like this? Like, why am I
Right,
like the red-headed stepchild of this group all of a sudden?
right. Because other than Orton making maybe one or two comments, because yeah, he had the title shot against it was Benoit at SummerSlam. And I think though that before that, like while he already had like that title shot guaranteed, Triple H had like a match with Benoit where the title was on the line. And I think Orton said something about I can't wait for you to make it an all evolution main event or something like that. And it's like that rubbed Triple H the wrong way, even though he didn't have the title and he had to win the match. It's like all Orton was saying was I'd like to wrestle you for the title. But it's like Triple H got all pissy about that and everything. It was saying more about how they did Triple H's character at that time, I think, than anything else. But yeah. But so hopefully, whenever they decide it's time to turn Tiffany Stratton face, they will have worked with her on a face persona that she can do.
Well,
And
yeah, and
also
they did
hopefully and also hopefully again it's like a gradual thing and not like a sudden 180, you know what I mean?
right, and they did a very good job with Bailey, like turning her face and
Hmm.
disconnecting her from um uh she's a whiz. Goodness gracious, freaking
Damage control.
damage control. Thank you.
Damage
So they did
control
that.
alt delete.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what happens right now if I press control alt delete on my computer? No.
So they did a good job of that. So hopefully they can keep that in mind when they decide to turn to when they
Yeah,
decide
because
later
the
on.
Bailey thing, yeah, again, it had been going on for a while, pretty much from the moment that they brought Asuka and Kyrie into the group, and I think that was kind of the whole point was to make Bailey feel increasingly like the outcast, even though she started the fucking group.
Hmm.
It's like, how can I be kicked out of the group that I started? I don't know. Ask Brian Jones if you go dig him up.
Oh man,
You know what that's a reference to, right?
no.
That's the Rolling Stones.
Oh,
Brian Jones is actually credited with having been the guy who actually started the group. But in 1968, the rest of the band basically fired him because he had become erratic and drugged out and a lot of things like that. So the rest of the band was like, this isn't working with you. And there's a lot of people who were Brian Jones fans to this day. And he was a very talented musician because if you listen to like a lot of Stone songs from the earliest years, if you hear like an exotic type instrument that you don't typically hear on a rock record, he was playing it. Like he plays the recorder on Ruby Tuesday. He played the marimba on Under My Thumb, that kind of stuff. But they fired him from the group again because he was like sometimes not showing up. He was like on drugs too much. And if Keith Richards is telling you you're doing too many drugs,
there's a problem.
yeah. But there's like a lot of people on like out there still to this day who hate the Rolling Stones because they did Brian Jones wrong or this, that, or the other thing. The problem though too is Brian Jones wasn't a songwriter the way that Jagger and Richards became. Um, he also wasn't really a singer. So the Rolling Stones would have gotten nowhere if it wasn't for Mick Jagger and Keith Richards becoming the main creative forces behind the band. But there's people out there to this day who insist that Jagger and Richards stole the songs from Brian Jones, which I don't know how true that may or may not be. I've never looked into it that much because that just sounds like conspiracy shit, you know?
They should do a behind the scenes at the Rolling Stones and
Oh,
interview
I'm sure people
everybody.
have. I just have never gone into it. But yeah, I'm just like, oh, come on, you kidding me? But yeah, it's like, so the guy who started the group got kicked out of the group by other people. When else have they done that in wrestling? I guess with Nexus, right? They kicked out Wade Barrett.
Yeah,
He was basically the
eventually.
founder of Nexus, but then like Punk kicked him out. So,
Yeah.
you know, it
Nexus.
is always, yeah, it is always kind of an interesting thing. It's like, the guy who starts the group gets kicked out by everybody else. It's like he would have been if the Horsemen had ever kicked out Flair.
And you know what? The funniest thing, and this will be the last thing I want to talk about wrestling, and I think we'll call it a night, folks. But
No, I
the
want to be
interest.
on until daylight savings goes into effect.
Oh God, I know we roll the clocks back today, right?
No, we spring ahead.
Oh, that's right. Spring ahead, roll back. Yeah, fall
Yes.
back.
So
Spring
like
ahead.
so
Yay!
your clock will go from saying 1:59 to 3 o'clock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
So we got to be on two
the
more
next
hours.
the Nexus was so good, like in what they were doing, and that final thing that they did right before they're like, "Oh Mo, I think we messed up," where Brian Danielson choked the ring announcer with the freaking thing with his own
With a
tie. I think
tie,
it was his
with
own
his own
tie.
tie, his own tie.
That was so good, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my god, we pushed the envelope too far." No, actually, you didn't. That was perfect. Like that, the way that they
Yeah.
did that was actually from a storytelling and everything was really really good. They didn't have they could have they just like destroyed it. They're like they imploded it. They're like, "Oh my god, well, and then it just took a shit,
Well,
and then they
right.
tried to bring it back, and it wasn't the same. Like it just wasn't
Well,
as good.
I always thought that they overreacted when they fired Daniel Bryan for that. But
Yes,
they turned into a positive when they brought him back a few weeks later for that match at SummerSlam, that 7-on-7 match. The problem what happened then was that they beat the shit out of Cena in that match, including I think they did some move to him on like the concrete floor, and then he still came back and beat two guys. I think it was Slater and Barrett to win the match. And the story has come out that Cena pushed for that. And I think in years since, Cena has said, yeah, that was bad on my part. Problem was the damage was done. Nobody really took the group seriously afterwards. It's like if there was ever a time where the heels needed to go over, that was it, you
yep.
know, because nobody really took them as seriously anymore after that. And especially, I'm trying to remember who the seven guys were. It was Wade Barrett, it was Heath Slater, it was Justin Gabriel, it was Skip Sheffield,
Yes,
otherwise known as Ryback.
David Otunga.
It was David Otunga. It was Michael Tarver who did like nothing ever then, and Darren Young.
Mm-hmm.
So
Who
I was
they
like, yeah,
didn't want to put, who they pushed slightly because of his sexuality. Like
well
that was still on the no list, for WWE.
before they revealed that and everything though, I mean him and Titus O'Neil as the primetime players weren't bad as a team.
No, I thought they were great, but they never got the push I think they deserved.
Right. Slater and Gabriel tagged together for a while, but that was the thing. It's like none of these guys until Sheffield went away and came back as Ryback, and other than like Barrett's runs with the Intercontinental title, none of them ever really had any single success.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they those guys could have been more. We'll never really know for sure though because of the way it all played out, as they say. I mean, Bad News Barrett was still kind of one of my favorite things from the last 10 to 15 years or
Yes, when
so,
you
though,
come
when
out
he
and
was
I've got some bad news for you.
well, he'd come up and it seemed like he was like at like that podium that would always seem to like come up from the stage, like the
Yes.
Brood used to come up from the stage. He would be start banging on him, like, can we have some decorum, please? And then yeah, well, I've got some bad news for you. I still think that was brilliant as shit. So
Yeah.
I like Barrett as an announcer now. I think he provides this isn't a fair comparison, but kind of a Jesse Ventura type voice of having like a deep authoritative voice,
Hmm.
and he can speak from a position of I've done this, I've been there, kind of thing. So I actually like Barrett as an announcer.
Yeah.
So, but
He's
yeah, it's
definitely
like
one of the better ones in recent years.
again, but his career could have been better, and people want to criticize John Cena. I'll say, well, the first thing you got to criticize him for is the Nexus match at SummerSlam. Then I'll listen to you after that if you want to what you want to criticize him about. But that one, I'm right there with you on.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does bring us to the end of our show. We're not going to midnight. We're going to stop a little early. Wow, a little early at midnight. How about that? That's fantastic. Especially with
Yes,
daylight savings
if
coming.
Joe was here, we probably would still be talking about something. But yeah,
Yes.
Joe chose to abandon us tonight to go see a comedian
Well, I'm
when
not going to
he's got
lie.
two comedians right here.
I'm not going to lie. I have seen Gabriel Iglesias live, and he is one funny motherfucker.
Yeah, I was
Um,
gonna say he's I've never seen him like perform live. I've seen performances of him and I've seen him do some, acting roles. He's always seemed to be very entertaining, yes.
no, he definitely is, and uh, definitely worth going and spending the money to go see him. So I don't fault Joe for that. But we're gonna leave it at this. We thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate you watching, and if anybody is watching this after it's been recorded and no longer live, thank you for watching. We appreciate it. We love you, love everybody, and we hope you had a good time. We hope